When we think of the most infamous villains in fantasy literature, few stand as tall, literally and figuratively, as Sauron, the Dark Lord of Middle-earth. But behind that burning eye and his pursuit of power lies a story that spans millennia. Who was Sauron? Where did he come from? And what drove him to become the ultimate enemy of the free peoples of Middle-earth? Let's dive into the history of Sauron, one of Tolkien's most complex and enduring characters. Before he became the tyrant we know today, Sauron was originally named Mairon, a Maia, a powerful spirit among the Ainur. To understand Sauron's origins, we must first understand the hierarchy of these divine beings in Tolkien's legendarium. The Ainur were divided into two groups, the Valar, the mightiest among them, and the Maiar, lesser spirits who served the Valar. Mairon was counted among these lesser spirits, but his talents were anything but minor. He served Aulë the smith, the Valar, who was responsible for crafting and shaping the physical world. Under Aulë's teaching, Mairon became a master of craftsmanship, order and precision. In fact, he was so skilled that he was considered one of the greatest of the Maiar. Unlike others of his kind, Mairon was particularly obsessed with order and efficiency, seeking to bring perfection to everything he touched. But there was a darkness that began to stir within him, a desire for control, and a growing arrogance in his abilities. This made him susceptible to the influence of another powerful being, Melkor, the first Dark Lord, who would later be known as Morgoth. Morgoth was once the mightiest of the Valar, but he turned against his brethren and sought to dominate the world. Mairon admired Morgoth's power and ambition, and eventually he pledged himself to Morgoth's cause. This marked the beginning of Mairon's transformation into Sauron, the name that would become synonymous with fear and tyranny. Under Morgoth's command, Mairon, now known as Sauron, became his most trusted lieutenant. But what exactly did this role entail? Unlike Morgoth, who ruled through brute force and sheer terror, Sauron specialized in deception, subversion, and strategic warfare. He took on many roles, from a dark sorcerer to a commander of vast armies. He was instrumental in corrupting both elves and men, using promises of power and knowledge to bend them to his will. Sauron's influence was felt most keenly through his dominion over Tol in Gorhoth, also known as the Isle of Werewolves. This fortress was once a beautiful elven tower, but Sauron turned it into a place of dread, where he commanded legions of fell beasts and tortured his enemies. He even took the form of a great werewolf himself, further emphasizing his mastery over dark magic and shape-shifting. But even at this stage, Sauron's true strength lay, not just in raw power, but in his intellect. He was the mastermind behind many of Morgoth's schemes, and was responsible for sowing discord among the free peoples. When Morgoth was finally defeated at the end of the First Age in the War of Wrath, Sauron was one of the few of Morgoth's servants who managed to escape capture. He initially feigned repentance, coming before the Valar to seek forgiveness. But this was all a ruse. Sauron quickly fled and hid in the shadows, plotting his next move and waiting for the right moment to reassert his influence. The Second Age is where Sauron truly came into his own. With Morgoth gone, Sauron saw a vacuum of power that he could fill. But rather than relying on brute force from the outset, he chose a subtler approach. Sauron knew that to dominate Middle-earth, he would need allies and influence among the free peoples. To achieve this, he took on the guise of Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, a fair and wise figure who presented himself as a friend and guide to the elves. He approached the elves of Eregion, a realm known for its smiths and craftsmen, led by Celebrimbor, the grandson of Feanor. Celebrimbor was eager to learn from Annatar's knowledge, and together they began forging the Rings of Power. He created 7 rings for the Dwarven kings, mighty rulers known for their skill in mining and craftsmanship. These rings enhanced their natural greed, driving them to amass vast treasures. But the dwarves were stubborn and strong-willed. Though their greed grew, they did not fall under Sauron's complete control. Instead, the rings brought them misfortune and strife, leading to the ruin of their kingdoms. Next, Sauron turned to men, the most easily corrupted of the free peoples. He forged 9 rings and bestowed them upon great kings, sorcerers and warriors among men. Unlike the dwarves, the power of the rings quickly consumed them. The bearers of these 9 rings gained incredible power, wealth and longevity, but with time they paid a terrible price. Their bodies faded, and their wills were entirely subjugated to Sauron's. They became the Nazgûl, the ring wraiths, undying servants bound to the will of the Dark Lord. Invisible and terrible, the Nazgûl would haunt Middle-earth for centuries, relentless in their pursuit of their master's enemies. It's crucial to understand that Sauron didn't forge all the rings himself. The elves, under Celebrimbor's guidance, created the lesser rings and the 3 elven rings. But Sauron secretly forged the One Ring in the fires of Mount Doom, pouring much of his own power and malice into it. His plan was simple. The One Ring would give him control over all the other rings and by extension their bearers. With the forging of the One Ring, Sauron's plan reached its dark culmination. The inscription on the ring reveals his true purpose. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. And let's hear it in black speech.
Ashnazg Durbatuluk, Ashnazg Gimbatul, Ashnazg Trakatuluk, Agshburzum Ishi Krimpatul.
This singular artifact gave Sauron dominion over all other rings. However, the elves quickly realized the truth when Sauron put on the One Ring. The power of the ring revealed his treachery, and the elves immediately hid their rings from him. This marked the beginning of the War of the Elves and Sauron, during which Sauron unleashed his armies upon Eregion, destroying the realm and capturing Celebrimbor. In a brutal display of his cruelty, Sauron tortured Celebrimbor to force him to reveal the locations of the rings, though he never gained control of the 3 elven rings. Even with this setback, Sauron was not easily deterred. His dominion spread across Middle-earth as he gathered more and more followers. By this time, he had established his stronghold in Mordor and constructed the Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower. But Sauron's ambitions extended even further. He sought to corrupt the mightiest of men, the Númenorians. The Númenorians were the greatest civilization of men during the Second Age, tall, wise and long-lived. But their pride was also their undoing. Sauron saw in them a perfect opportunity to sow discord. After his defeat in the war against the elves, Sauron was captured by the Númenorians under the leadership of King Ar-Pharazôn. However, this apparent capture was actually part of Sauron's plan. In chains, he was brought to Numenor, but it wasn't long before he wormed his way into the king's favor. Within a few short years, Sauron went from being a prisoner to the chief advisor of Ar-Pharazôn. He played on the Númenorians' fear of death, convincing them that they could achieve immortality by worshipping Morgoth. Temples were built, sacrifices were made, and soon the once noble Númenorians were corrupted beyond recognition. Sauron's manipulation reached its peak when he persuaded Ar-Pharazôn to invade the Undying Lands to claim immortality by force. This act of hubris led to the downfall of Numenor. The island was swallowed by the sea as punishment from the Valar, but Sauron, though losing his physical form, survived and returned to Middle-earth. Though Sauron's physical body was destroyed in the downfall of Numenor, his spirit endured. He returned to Mordor and began rebuilding his strength. The Third Age was a time of subtlety for Sauron. He could no longer take on a fair form and relied on dark sorcery and fear to assert his influence. At first he hid his presence as the necromancer of Dol Guldur in southern Mirkwood, where he quietly gathered power and began drawing creatures of darkness to his cause. It was during this time that Sauron's shadow began to fall once more over Middle-earth, though few recognized the threat for what it truly was. The Istari, or wizards, were sent by the Valar to oppose Sauron, and among them was Gandalf. It was Gandalf who suspected that the shadow in Dol Guldur was more than just a minor evil, leading to the formation of the White Council. Although the council eventually drove Sauron from Dol Guldur, this was merely a setback. Sauron returned to Mordor and openly declared himself once more, raising the Black Gate and preparing for the final confrontation. The War of the Ring was Sauron's ultimate bid for dominion over Middle-earth. With the One Ring still lost, his power was incomplete, but he knew that if he could reclaim it, no force in Middle-earth would be able to stand against him. His dark influence spread like a shadow across the land, as he gathered vast armies of orcs, trolls and men, corrupted by his promises of power. His forces swept across the realms, besieging the strongholds of the free peoples, Gondor, Rohan, and the elves, seeking to crush any who opposed his rule. Gondor, the last great kingdom of men, bore the brunt of Sauron's assault. The city of Minas Tirith, once a beacon of hope, became a battleground as Sauron's armies laid siege to its mighty walls. The skies darkened with the wings of the Nazgul, and the ground shook with the march of his legions. In the north, the kingdom of Rohan faced its own dire peril, as the forces of Saruman, Sauron's unwitting servant, sought to destroy the Rohirrim and prevent them from aiding Gondor. Despite the overwhelming might of Sauron's armies, the key to his victory lay not on the battlefield, but in the fate of a single object, the One Ring. Sauron's obsession with the ring blinded him to the courage and resilience of those who sought to destroy it. Far from the front lines of battle, a small and unlikely group of heroes carried the burden of Middle-earth's fate. Among them was Frodo Baggins, a simple hobbit from the Shire, who had taken upon himself the seemingly impossible task of carrying the ring to Mount Doom, the very heart of Sauron's power. As Sauron's gaze turned ever more intensely toward the battlefield, believing his enemies to be focused on a futile defense, he failed to see the true threat. Frodo and his loyal companion, Samwise Gamgee, journeyed through countless perils, guided by a growing sense of dread as the ring's power weighed heavily upon them. At last they reached the fiery chasm of Mount Doom, the only place where the ring could be unmade. In that final moment, as the ring's seductive power nearly claimed Frodo, it was not the strength of armies or the wisdom of great leaders that determined the outcome, but a twist of fate. Gollum, the creature once enslaved by the ring, seized it in his madness only to stumble and fall into the fires of Mount Doom, taking the ring with him. The One Ring was destroyed, and with it Sauron's power was shattered. The Dark Lord's empire, built on fear and tyranny, came crashing down. His tower of Barad-dûr crumbled, the Nazgul were consumed in the fires of Mount Doom, and the great eye of Sauron faded into nothingness. The shadow that had threatened to engulf Middle-earth was finally lifted, and Sauron's reign of terror was brought to an end, not by might but by the courage and perseverance of the smallest of creatures. The free peoples of Middle-earth were victorious, and a new era of peace could begin. Sauron may be gone, but his legacy endures as a cautionary tale of ambition, corruption, and the insidious nature of power. From a Maia who sought perfection to the embodiment of evil, Sauron's journey is one of the most fascinating and tragic in Tolkien's legendarium. His rise and fall are a testament to the danger of unchecked ambition and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more Fellowship of the Lore stories. Also, if you're an artist or have artwork and pictures you'd like to see featured in future videos, we'd love to collaborate. Contact us using the information in the description below, and we'll make sure to give you a shout out in the video. Until next time.